At the family dinner, my daughter-in-law mocked my hearing aid. My son said, "It's just a joke, lighten up." I stayed quiet, but my husband stood up. Without a word, he showed them the door. They would discover the rest the next morning. Before all of that, there was a table set with too many plates and a night I told myself would pass without incident. The story you are about to hear is a work of fiction created by the Her Chains channel team, based on real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotions, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. My name is Evadne Mercer. I learned to wear a hearing aid later than I should have. I spent years pretending I didn't need one, nodding through conversations, laughing a beat too late, asking people to repeat themselves with a smile that tried to make it smaller than it was. When I finally accepted the diagnosis, the adjustment felt like learning a new language, one spoken inside my own head. Sounds arrived sharper, closer. Voices carried weight again. It was a relief, but also a marker I couldn't hide. That evening, I adjusted the device once before we left the house, careful not to make a show of it. I told myself to sit where I could see everyone's faces. I told myself to listen more than I spoke. I told myself that family dinners worked best when I stayed out of the way. My son had invited us to his home, and that mattered to me. He had always been particular about order and tone, about keeping things easy. I respected that. His wife liked things light, jokes moving fast, the kind of humor that filled silence before it could settle. I had learned to smile at the right moments. When we arrived, I hugged them both and took my seat. Plates were passed. Someone poured wine. Conversation moved quickly, overlapping in places where I leaned in and caught up. I laughed when others laughed. I kept my hands folded when I wasn't eating, aware of how visible I felt. I noticed my husband beside me before I noticed anything else. The way he angled his chair slightly toward mine. The way his hand rested near my elbow. Not touching, just there. I breathed and reminded myself that I had done this before, that I could do it again. The comment came casually, tossed across the table like it didn't need permission. I didn't react right away. I felt the room shift before I felt anything else. I didn't know they made those in beige, my daughter-in-law said, smiling at her plate and then at me. It almost blends in. I paused with my fork halfway up. It helps me hear better, I said, keeping my voice steady. She tilted her head and cupped her ear exaggeratedly. What? Sorry, can you say that louder? She laughed. A short burst that invited the table to join her. My husband's shoulders tightened beside me. I felt it before I looked. I said it helps me hear, I repeated. Oh, I know, she said. I'm just teasing. She reached across the table and gestured toward my ear. It's just so noticeable. I keep expecting it to beep or something. It doesn't. I said, it's medical equipment. She shrugged. Still, it's kind of distracting. I mean, we're talking, and then she mimicked a pause, tapping the air as if waiting for a delayed response. You know, my son glanced up. Hey, he said, then stopped. His eyes flicked to his wife. He didn't finish the thought. The table went quiet in that way that means everyone is listening, but pretending not to be. My father-in-law cleared his throat. Someone lifted a glass and set it back down. I'm right here, I said. You can talk to me like anyone else. She smiled again. Softer this time. Relax. I'm not being mean. She turned to the others. She's always been sensitive, right? My son let out a small laugh. Not loud. Enough. My husband said my name, once, under his breath. I shook my head slightly. Not yet. See, she continued. I'm just saying it takes some getting used to. It throws the rhythm off. She leaned back in her chair. Like when someone talks too slow or too loud. I talk the way I hear. I said. She raised her hands. Okay, okay. Don't get upset. Her voice stayed light. I didn't think we were policing jokes at dinner. No one told her to stop. No one redirected the conversation. The plates stayed where they were. The moment stretched, thin and exposed. I set my fork down carefully and folded my hands in my lap. I focused on breathing evenly, on not making myself the disruption. The silence didn't protect me. It framed me across the table. My daughter-in-law took a sip of wine and smiled again, satisfied, as if the point had landed exactly where she wanted it. My son leaned back in his chair, one arm draped over the back like he was settling in to watch something unfold rather than standing inside it. Okay, he said, exhaling through a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. It's just a joke, lighten up. The words landed heavier than anything his wife had said. I turned toward him. I didn't laugh. He glanced at me, then away. You don't have to. She didn't mean anything by it. She mocked how I hear. I said, I kept my voice even. Careful. That's not a misunderstanding. He nodded once. Slow. Like he was buying himself time. I know, it just didn't need to turn into a thing. A thing. I repeated. His jaw tightened. For a moment, I saw it, the hesitation. The version of him that had once corrected people when they spoke over me. The boy who used to sit on my right side at restaurants so I could hear better. That version flickered, then disappeared. She was trying to keep it light. He said, You know how she is. I know how it felt. I said. He rubbed his palm against the table. Mom, we're having dinner. Everyone's here. Let's not derail the night over something small. Something small. His wife looked at him. Relieved. She reached for her glass. Unbothered now. As if the verdict had already been delivered. The room followed his lead. Conversation began to creep back in at the edges. Cautious at first, then steadier. My husband shifted beside me. I felt the tension in him, held tight. I didn't look at him. I didn't want him stepping in yet. Not when I was still standing there, trying to understand how easily my discomfort had been filed under inconvenience. I didn't ask anyone to take sides. I said quietly, I asked not to be made into a joke. My son sighed. The sound edged with impatience. And I'm saying, let it go. There it was. Not cruelty. Something worse. Efficiency. I nodded once. I picked up my napkin and placed it back on my lap, hands steady. Around the table, no one spoke. No one corrected him. The night continued. Adjusted smoothly around me. As if my hurt were an obstacle they'd already learned how to step over. I stayed where I was, listening to voices move past me. Understanding then that my pain wasn't denied. It was simply inconvenient. I had learned over years of moments like this. What happened when I spoke too soon? The first time I pushed back at a family gathering, my son had pulled me aside afterward and said, You didn't need to make it uncomfortable. Another time. When I asked his wife not to comment on my hearing in front of others, she'd smiled and said, You're reading into it. You're just sensitive. Sensitive. Difficult. Dramatic. Those words followed me more faithfully than apologies ever had. So when the table went quiet again, I didn't fill the space. I knew how quickly silence could be turned against me if I gave it the wrong shape. I knew how easily the story could become about my tone instead of their words. My husband leaned closer. Do you want me to say something? He asked quietly. Not yet. I said. I kept my eyes on my plate. Let me handle it. Handle it meant staying still. It meant not letting my reaction become the evening's disruption. I had learned that once I was labeled the problem, nothing I said afterward mattered. Every sentence became evidence. My son glanced over, checking whether I was still quiet. His shoulders eased when he saw that I was. That was the moment I understood the trade being made. My silence bought comfort for everyone else. It kept the evening moving. It spared them the work of looking at what had just happened. I stayed quiet, not because I agreed, and not because I was afraid. I stayed quiet because I knew the cost of speaking without leverage. I had paid it before, and I wasn't willing to pay it again. My husband hadn't said a word since my son waved it away. He didn't reach for his glass. He didn't lean back. He sat still, eyes moving once from my daughter-in-law's face to my ear, then settling somewhere deeper. Like he was measuring something he'd already decided to carry, I shifted in my chair. He leaned closer. "You all right?" he asked quietly. "I am," I said. The lie landed gently between us. He didn't challenge it. Across the table, my son started talking again, louder now, easing the room back into motion. His wife laughed at something someone else said. Already finished with me, my husband's hand rested near my elbow, not touching, just present. It was the same way he'd stood beside me in audiology offices, listening while I learned the difference between sounds I'd missed for years. "They don't get it," I murmured. "I know," he said. That was all. No advice, no correction, just acknowledgement. He watched the table the way he used to watch crowds when our kids were small, alert without being obvious. When my daughter-in-law made another small gesture toward my ear, dismissive this time. Like punctuation, his jaw tightened. I felt it in the space between us before I saw it. My son glanced over again, checking. My husband met his eyes. He didn't smile. He didn't look away. "Dinner's getting cold," my daughter-in-law said lightly, as if nothing had shifted. My husband straightened his chair. The movement was unhurried, deliberate. He pushed his napkin aside and stood. I looked up at him then. He didn't look back. He was already moving, already certain. Whatever came next wasn't impulse. It was decision. My husband stood so quietly that, at first, no one noticed. The chair didn't scrape. He simply rose, straightened his jacket, and stepped away from the table. Conversation stumbled, then slowed. My daughter-in-law kept talking for half a sentence before realizing she no longer had an audience. "Where are you going?" she asked, half laughing. He didn't answer. He walked past the kitchen doorway, past the coat rack, and reached the front door. He turned the lock with the same calm care he used every morning. Then he opened it and stepped aside. The cold air rushed in. So did the meaning. My son stared at him. "Dad." My husband finally spoke, his voice low and even. "It's time to go." My daughter-in-law laughed again. Sharper now. "You can't be serious." He gestured once toward the open door. Not hurried, not angry. "An invitation, nothing more?" "This is ridiculous," she said. "We were joking." My husband looked at her for the first time. "You were mocking my wife." My son stood halfway from his chair. "Come on, let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," my husband said. "You heard her. You chose to ignore it." Silence dropped hard across the table. My father-in-law cleared his throat, then stopped himself. No one sat. No one defended the joke now. "This is overreacting," my daughter-in-law said, but her voice wavered. "You're embarrassing everyone." "My husband didn't move. You did that." My son's face tightened. He looked at me then, searching for something permission. Maybe. I didn't give it. I held his gaze without changing my expression. Whatever he was hoping for didn't come. His mother stood first. She gathered her purse, lips pressed thin. "We'll talk later," she said to my son, already retreating. My daughter-in-law hesitated, eyes flicking between the door and the table, then grabbed her coat. She passed me without looking. My son lingered a second longer. "Mom," he said quietly. I didn't answer. He exhaled, sharp and frustrated, then followed the others out. The door closed behind them with a soft, final click. The house felt larger immediately, quieter. My husband turned back toward me. "I'm sorry," he said, not for what he'd done, but for how long I'd been made to endure it. I reached for his hand. It was steady. Whatever had been holding the evening together had snapped cleanly, and by morning, the things I'd been quietly holding together would start falling loudly. What remained was honesty, and a line that would not be crossed again. The silence settled slowly. Like it needed permission, I stayed where I was, hands still folded in my lap, listening to the quiet stretch. My husband walked back to the table and sat beside me, not saying anything right away. He waited, the way he always did when he knew words might arrive late. "This is going to be a problem," I said finally. My voice sounded smaller than I intended. He nodded once. "It might be. They'll be angry," I said. "Your parents, our son." "I know." I turned toward him. "What if this costs us everything?" He met my eyes without hesitation. "Then it costs us everything." The certainty in his voice startled me, not because it was loud, but because it wasn't. He wasn't bracing for an argument. He had already accepted the outcome. I didn't want it to end like this. I said, "I just wanted dinner." "I know," he said, "but they weren't giving you dinner. They were taking something." I swallowed. "They'll say I'm dramatic." "They already do," he replied. "That's never stopped them." I rested my hands on the table, grounding myself in the cool surface. "Our son didn't even try." My husband exhaled slowly. He chose comfort. "That's not the same as choosing right." The words settled in me, heavy and clear. I stayed quiet. I said, "I thought that would keep the peace." He reached for my hand then, finally touching. "Peace that asks you to disappear isn't peace." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the truth of it land. The fear was still there of calls, of accusations, of distance that might not heal, but underneath it was something steadier. For the first time that night, I felt safe. Later, after the dishes were stacked and the house had settled into its own rhythm, my husband found me at the kitchen table with my notebook open. I hadn't realized I'd taken it out. "You're thinking again," he said. "I always am," I replied. He glanced at the pages. Names, dates, small notes written in my careful hand, things I'd tracked because no one else had. "You don't have to do this tonight," he said. "I know," I said. "I just need to see it." I traced one line with my finger, a reminder to renew a policy, another to follow up on paperwork, a third to call someone back before a deadline passed. None of it looked dramatic written down. It never did. "They assume it happens on its own," I said. He pulled out the chair across from me. "They assume you don't mind." I didn't. I said, "Not at first." I remembered the early years, when helping felt like belonging, when taking care of details meant staying connected. I never announced what I handled. I never asked to be thanked. I believed respect would follow consistency. It didn't. "They don't see the work," I said. "They see the result. And they think that's just how things are." My husband nodded. "Because it's always been you." I closed the notebook. And tonight, it wasn't. The room felt different with that truth spoken aloud, lighter, but edged. I understood then that what I'd withdrawn wasn't help. It was access, the quiet scaffolding they leaned on without ever looking down. "I won't chase them," I said. "I won't explain." He reached for my hand. "You don't have to." For the first time in years, I didn't feel the pull to fix what came next. I let the space remain exactly as it was. The phone started ringing before the coffee finished brewing. I watched it light up on the counter and let it ring. When it stopped, it started again almost immediately. My husband came into the kitchen, already dressed. "They're up early," he said. "They always are when something isn't working," I replied. The first voicemail was my son. His voice was tight, controlled. "Mom, call me. There's a problem." The second was my daughter-in-law. "No greeting. We need to talk. Now." By the third call, I answered. "What did you do?" my son asked without preamble. "I stopped handling things that aren't mine to carry anymore." I said. There was a pause. I could hear breathing on the other end, quick and irritated. "That doesn't make sense." "It makes perfect sense." I said. "You just weren't aware of it." His wife cut in. "The account didn't go through. The paperwork you usually send, no one has it." "I know." I said. "You can't just decide that overnight," she said. "That affects people." "So did last night," I replied. My son lowered his voice. "Mom, let's not connect those things. That was dinner. This is different." "It's the same," I said. "You chose to dismiss me." "I chose to step back." "That's extreme," he said. "You're punishing us." "I'm not punishing anyone." I said, "I'm opting out." Silence followed. Not the comfortable kind. The kind where assumptions collapse. "You never said you were doing all that." He finally said, "I didn't need to." I replied, "It was done." Quietly. Reliably. His wife scoffed. "So what? Now we're supposed to apologize and everything goes back." I let that sit. Nothing goes back. My husband took a seat across from me. He didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. "We need time." My son said, "You have it." I said, "Just not my silence anymore." The line went dead. No goodbye. No final argument. The house stayed quiet after that. No more calls came in. The urgency dissolved into absence. And with it, something else loosened inside me. For the first time, the imbalance was visible. And once seen, it couldn't be unseen. When my son called again a week later, his voice was quieter. "I want to come by," he said. "Just me." "All right," I said. "We'll talk." When he arrived, he looked at my ear first. I didn't adjust the hearing aid. I didn't explain it. I let it be visible. The way my life had always been, I didn't handle it right. He said, "I was trying to keep things easy." "I know." I said, "But easy for you was costly for me." He nodded. "I don't want to lose you." "You haven't." I said, "But things don't work the same anymore." That was the boundary. Calm, clear, not negotiable. Later, when he left, my husband squeezed my hand. "You didn't bend," he said. "I don't need to." I replied, "Here's what I learned, and I'll say it plainly because it matters beyond this table and this family. Peace that requires your silence is not peace. Love that asks you to shrink is not love. Respect begins the moment you stop explaining why you deserve it. If this story resonated with you, take a second to like the video, leave a comment, or subscribe. It helps more stories like this reach people who need to hear them. I wear my hearing aid openly now. I speak when I need to, and I stay where I'm treated with care.